This is session 2 of my solo Mythic Bastionland campaign. I'll begin with a little recap of what happened in session 1. So I introduced 2 characters, Not, the Gilded Knight, and Maldita, his squire. They have journeyed into a new realm where they've never been before, and they are seeking out the banner of a warband that was sent from their homeland into this realm. The warband has not been heard of since, and they want to find out what happened to them, retrieve their banner, and return it home. They are inexperienced. Not has only recently become a knight after finding golden armor on a beach, and he brought this armor to a seer and was knighted. Maldita is a friend of his, and she has been caught up in his enthusiasm for becoming a knight and joined him on this quest. In the new realm, they had a gentle introduction to knighthood. They were traveling through some grasslands. They encountered some children who were playing a game related to skeletons. They were disguised as skeletons, and they were throwing bones. They later encountered a group of scout sisters led by a woman called Demelza, who told them that they had been attacked by undead creatures, soldiers with rotting flesh, with exposed bones, dead, moving things. Not sent Maldita to return the women to their village safely, and he set out alone to track down these creatures and see if he could... I don't know what he intended to do, but what he found at the site of the attack was body parts of these creatures, human body parts, but rotted and with indications that they had been soldiers. And they were being picked over by large carrion birds, and Not got into a fight with those, and more or less came out on top. So that was the end of the first session. Between sessions, or at the end of the session, it's good to decide whether to continue from that point or to make a time jump. And I think what I'd like to do is jump from that point in time to a time when Not has reunited with Maldita, and together they've traveled with Demelza to seek help. So Demelza is a leader among her people, among the people of this village, and she wants to seek out support, protection for her people because they've been attacked by these creatures. And Not, holding true to his vow, wants to help her do that. So I think where I'd like to begin is in the nearest holding, the 3 of them there seeking help. So to do that, I need to prepare a holding. Okay, so on my map, I can see the nearest holding is not too far away. 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away. So it's somewhere that Demelza would reasonably know the location of and would be able to lead the group there. So let's roll up some details for that holding. So this holding, I can see on the map, is bordering a river, and to the south there are bogs. So that might give me some help with coming up with a name or a feeling for what this is like. Also, it's drawn as a walled town. I'll go to the Civilization Spark table and roll some details for it. Okay, 2d12 for the holding. So what I have in the style is it is proud, and a feature that it has is a gate. The next step is the Bailey, so 2d12 for that. The style is industrious, and a feature is a fountain. Then the keep at the center of the holding. A centerpiece is a cauldron, and a decoration is antlers. So that gives me some stuff I can play with for what it will look like. I'd also like to have a sense of what it trades in. So I'm going to roll on goods. I might roll twice on goods. So I'm getting a theme, decorated, and a type, pottery. And give me one more. Maybe I'll go with luxuries for the second item. A rarity, so sacred, and a type, sacred silk. Okay, there is enough to work with there. There's also options for drama, woe, and news. I feel like I can roll with them when I get to them. So there's a couple of questions I want to answer about the group of Not, Maldita, and Demelza arriving in this town. I'd like a name for the town. Town names are tough. Let me roll on the Ask the Stars and see if it conjures something. So I'll roll for sign and position on that. Sign is the cage, protection, obligation. So I think protection is something that would lend itself to a name. And 10, exiled, guilt, autonomy. Okay, autonomy is jumping out, and I'm going to stay simple. I'm going to call it Freetown. So that might lean into the history of it in some way. Maybe it was part of the domain of another ruler and then broke away from it. The other question I want to answer is this the seat of power for the whole realm? I would kind of prefer that it's not. So I'm going to ask the stars. I'm going to say it's unlikely. So I'm really rolling 2 die. And the answer is no, it is not the seat of power. The next question I want to ask is, shall I begin with the scene of the group arriving at this town, or will I have them already there? And I'm fine with either, so let's ask the stars. Have they just arrived in this town? 10 is a yes. Not is arriving in his gilded armor. He wants to make a very strong impression. It's early in the day. The sun is shining down on his brilliant golden armor. Beside him is Demelza, and she is actually quite striking herself. When we rolled Demelza, it was noted that she wears elegant clothes. So I think she doesn't look like a peasant coming from a remote village. She looks like a lady of the realm who is in appropriate company being escorted into this holding by a knight. And I think it might even, I don't know whether Not takes notice of it or not, but it might grate on him slightly that people will think that he is something like a bodyguard, potentially, to this lady who's arriving, rather than him being the significant figure who's coming in here. And joining them, as always, is Maldita, who is more humble and riding on a pony a few paces behind. And the first thing that strikes Not about this town is it has a wall around it, but the wall is not kept up in the best of condition. It's a combination of wood and clay or dried mud. It's cracked, and in parts there are even small holes in it. There's birds nesting in it. It's not an impressive or forbidding protection for the town, but it does have this absolutely grand gate that maybe suggests that this town was in better condition in the past. There's this very proud stone gate that is maybe even as tall as the wall and another half again. That this is something from another era. It's intricately carved. It is stonework that maybe the secrets of that type of stonework have been lost. And if they needed to repair this gate, they may not be able to do it to the same standard again. And The gate is open. There's nothing forbidding them from coming inside. And they greet a few passers-by as they enter and ride into the bustling center of this town. It's near the river. There is trade coming that way. There is a couple of roads joining together at a crossroads near here, and this is a bustling market with a lot of people trading, haggling, shouting, voices layered on top of each other. At the center of all this is a fountain, which people kind of come to. You can see that there's people scooping water out of it and drinking it. It's the central well and central decoration for the town. And the question I have for maybe it's just a luck roll. How easy will it be for Not to make contact with an official from this town or someone from the kind of the inner circle of the ruler? So I'm just going to roll a d6. And I get a 1. The rule for luck roll: if you need to consult the whims of fate, make a luck roll on the d6. A high roll favours the players, a low one does not. On a 1, there's a crisis, something immediately bad. I think that's a good time to return to the civilization sparks and see what drama or woe is facing this holding. So let's go with drama. So the theme is infidelity, which has one obvious meaning, but maybe there might be something else. Oh, and the detail is a brawl. Okay, I think to deliver on that prompt, I'm going to need to know who's involved. So he's interested in making contact with someone from the council. There is a ruler in every holding, and there's a few other roles: steward, marshal, sheriff, envoy. I'm going to roll a d6 to see which of these people are involved in this drama. 1, 2, 3, 4 for those rules, 5 for the ruler, and I'll re-roll on a 6. Okay, the steward. So the steward's responsibility: ruling in the absence of the ruler, carrying the authority of the holding and the key to the treasury. So there is a steward in this holding who is facing some very public drama related to an infidelity, and this is resulting in a brawl. Let me quickly roll up who this steward is. So the first question: is this steward a knight? That is a 3. No, the steward is not a knight. Returning to the people sparks, let me get a background for the steward. Upbringing is pious, and a memory is of escape. And I will go through I'll just pick a knight. The knight should have names. Okay, Howl. So Not and the others ride into town. I think it's appropriate to dismount as they're in this crowded marketplace, enjoying the attention that he's getting from all these traders and just the people who live in this holding. Some children are crowded around looking at this really impressive steed, and the armor more than anything else just reflecting the sunlight. And it's like as he turns around, it's like he's shining a spotlight on different people's faces. Maybe the children are starting a game where they try and get into the reflection and have this golden light shone onto them, pushing each other out of the way to get into it. He's making his way to the fountain. He's also a little bit distracted because he notices that Demelza is getting a similar amount of attention. So she has ridden in. She rides extremely comfortably. So her background is that she comes from these horse traders or this nomadic people from the plains in the south who raise horses, and she's been riding since before she could walk. She's just completely at ease in the saddle and extremely elegant, and I think people are looking at her and wondering who she is. She must be some important lady who's arrived in the holding. So Not is clearing his voice, trying to get some attention, And just before that happens, there's a crash. And he looks across and he sees two people tumbling through a market stall and engaged in a brawl, fighting each other. And he gets a glimpse of these two men, and let's check their appearances. So Howell is youthful and dressed vibrantly. He stands out from the crowd just in how he's dressed. He's clearly wealthy, and he also has a quite conservative haircut where the top of his head is shaved in a what seems to be maybe a kind of a religious style. And the other man who's on top of him, who's tried to punch him in the face, let's see how he looks. Robust and crude in his dress. So it is a wealthy man trying to protect his face as what appears to be someone more down on his luck in terms of his wealth and his dress, and is trying to batter him around the head. Not is going to immediately get involved. He sees himself as a protector of people, and let me handle this as a combat. So I've rolled up the vigor, clarity, etc. for Howell, the steward, and for this gentleman who has attacked him. This crudely dressed ruffian is battering Howell about the head, trying to really hit his face. He's trying to make his mark on him, and he has an advantage because he's on top of him on the ground. So normally with an unarmed attack, it would be a D4, but I'm going to give him a bonus of a D8 along with it for his first attack. Okay, so that is a 3, which does not overcome Howell's guard. So he is keeping his hands up. He doesn't appear to be a fighter, but he's keeping his hands up around his head, and he's taking these blows. And Not is going to step into the fray. As he walks towards it, he's very eager to end this before even understanding exactly what's going on. He just immediately feels like the man on the ground needs help, and he pulls out his mace. He's going to use his mace, but I'm just looking in the harm and scars rules. Scars are only gained through real deadly combat, not training or bloodless duels. He has no intent to do permanent harm to anyone, so I think he's going to take his mace and almost use it as a prodding stick to put it up against the attacker on top and push him off Howell. So he's going to do that with a D10. Okay, and he rolls a 2, which is pretty ineffective. Although it does, so the attacker has a guard of 1, so he has overcome that and reduced the attacker's guard to 6. I think the attacker is definitely going to take notice of that. So he gets knocked off Howell. Howell tries to shimmy backwards, pull himself out from underneath and clear of the collapsed market stall that they were fighting on top of. And the attacker probably took a good push on his side from the mace, will probably be bruised, and is holding himself in pain, and he stands up and he looks at Not. Let's get a spark for his voice. 6 is weak, weak tone, and a manner relaxed. So the attacker, who I should really give a name to because I've been in this for so long, the attacker, he is called Ogan. Oh, what's that about? No need for you to get so violent. And Not is a little taken aback at that and says, I don't believe I began the violence here. You were assaulting that man. And Ogan continues, I have good reason to assault that adulterer. And there's a gasp among the crowd. And Ogan begins hurling abuse but very matter of fact. He doesn't appear to be exaggerating. He just is being very precise in what he knows to have happened between Howl and Ogan's wife. This is all very public, very scandalous. The people are crowded around and are listening to this. And let me see Howl's personality. How is Howl responding to this? His demeanor is serene, and his interest is music. So Ogan is very publicly, with the whole town assembled, accusing Howl of having an affair with Ogan's wife. And Howl dusts himself off. He's dressed well. He looks like a holy man. He has a kind of a peace about him. And he's speaking not so much to Ogan, but to the whole crowd of people. He's a very political. You can see that he's concerned with his own appearance to the people rather than this precise incident. And he's wondering about how this will be spoken of in the future, and not about whether he's going to get punched right now. Let me get a voice for this guy. Erratic tone, and a poetic manner. Yes. Of course, we should hear out any member of the public in this holding who has something to say. Of course, we should listen to them, and words are a thing of beauty, and we should never silence someone, even when what they say is not true, because it is a form of truth to him. It's what he believes, but I assure all of you, I don't even need to assure any of you, really. I mean, you know what kind of man I am, you know. The simple thing here, and he's talking a lot, and this is something relatively new to Not. Not is a farmer who has quite recently become a knight, has not really moved in the circles of the councils of holdings and the types of people who might acquire power and wield it and manipulate people. And he's listening to what this guy's saying, and he's losing the thread of it, and he's not entirely sure what Howl's point is, but he is beginning to forget what Howl has been accused of, and he just seems to think this man seems to be quite authoritative. So I think basically what's happening here is that Howl is attempting to manipulate the group of people that are listening to him into thinking that he is a dignified and courteous man, that his primary concern is the well-being of everyone in this holding. Any accusations about improper behavior are not things that anyone should really pay any attention to. What's happening here is an NPC is attempting to manipulate a player character. And I'm just reading through the action procedure. When the players take action, the referee works down this list. Intent. What are you trying to do? What Not is trying to do is appraise this situation, listen to what he's hearing from this man, and get a sense of whether he trusts him or not. What makes it possible? Not is using his judgment. He's a little bit inexperienced, a little bit naive. And I think what is at risk, what cost could come about here, is he could, to some extent, fall under the sway of Howl. If Howl is particularly convincing, Not may take his side in this particular situation and maybe beyond it. So I'm going to do a roll with clarity, a clarity save, to see how Not responds to How Not responds to Howell's speech about his integrity and his innocence in the face of this accusation. So this is Not rolling clarity. Not's clarity is normally 9, but he spent the night fighting birds, so his clarity has been reduced to 8. And I rolled 15. So Howell is continuing to speak. I have always had what is best for this holding, what is best for the realm, as my number one concern. And the problem with being so dedicated to these things, is that it inspires jealousy from the smaller people who don't appreciate this. And this is the first time when he draws any attention to Ogan, turning towards him, and the crowd of people who are kind of swayed by this also look towards Ogan, some of them disapprovingly. And Howell continues, "How can I do my work when even just passing through this market, I'm accosted by this ruffian, slandering me and accusing me of outrageous claims for which he has no evidence." And Ogan tries to butt in and lay out the evidence that he has for his accusations, and this is when Not gets involved. So Not, who has already impacted Ogan with his mace, places the mace gently on Ogan's chest, and let's see if that stops Ogan in his tracks. So I think Ogan will do a spirit save to see if he wants to risk the wrath of Not and continue to lay out what he wants to say. And that's a fail. So as soon as the mace presses against Ogan's chest and he's reminded of this fairly strong pain in his abdomen where he was pushed off Howell, he stops mid-sentence and he looks, so many different emotions playing across his face. He's scared, he is furious, and he is embarrassed because the entire assembled marketplace is looking at him and thinking, why are you insulting one of the paragons of this holding? And I think the scene will kind of draw more or less to a close, but we have an opportunity for Not to talk to Howell afterwards discreetly and explain to him who he is and what he's here to do. Something I'd be interested to know about the other characters here. So we have Maldita and Demelza. I'd like to know how they feel about everything that's just happened. So Maldita, I'm also going to roll for her and see if she's swayed by Howell's speech. Her clarity is 2, so it's extremely unlikely that she will listen to this. Am I using the right? Let me just check. Clarity. Yeah, I think clarity is. Keen instinct, lucid mind, shrewd eyes. I think it's a reasonable one to roll to see if you are manipulated by someone's speech. So, if Maldita gets a 2 or a 1, then she will see through Howell. Otherwise, she will also be quite impressed with him. 19. Maldita is ready to attack Ogan for his baseless accusations. And Demelza, I don't have stats for Demelza yet. I'll just roll. I'll use the knight approach of a d12 and a d6 because I think Demelza is quite a strong character. Oh wow, is that? No, sorry, I rolled 2 d12s. Those stats are too big. D12 and a d6. 14 for her clarity. So let's roll for Demelza and see how she feels about Howell. A 4. So Not after intimidating Ogan and kind of pushing him out of the market. Well, encouraging him to go home quietly. Not is swept up by Howl. Howl puts his arm around him and begins to walk through the marketplace with him and is speaking enthusiastically with him. And Maldita is very eager to follow, and she follows after them. Demelza has held back during all of this. She's watched this play out, and she is quite worried about the knight that she has linked herself to in this endeavor. So she's come here looking for help, and at the first hurdle, this knight seems to have been potentially swayed by a character that she is skeptical of. She looks around, she listens to the murmurs around her. She gets the feeling that almost everyone here is a huge fan of Howl, that he is a beloved character, and it's outrageous that he would be accused of something so scandalous. And she feels a little bit out of place here. She takes a deep breath and rises up and holds herself with great poise and slowly follows Not and Howl. Freetown is known for trading in sacred silks. Howl takes the group to a building that he owns. The outer part of it, the part that they enter that's facing the street, is a shop that has these very fine silks that have religious quotations embroidered into them, and they have some kind of blessing made on them, which Howl is involved in doing. Howl has some kind of religious standing. He leads them in here, and there are people inside the shop buying these, and it's clear that these are luxurious items and expensive items, and people are a little bit in awe of Howl as he enters, and he has this group of people trailing behind him, Howl, Maldita, and Demelza, and he leads them through the store and into the back rooms where he has a well-appointed office that is his, where he does his business. He sits them down and welcomes them more formally to Freetown and asks how he can be of service. And I think what Not does is he opens a ruddy sack that he has with him and places onto the desk between them a severed arm that he collected from the site of the undead attack. And I want to ask the stars, is there any indication from this arm that it has any kind of supernatural aspect to it? Or does it just appear to be a severed arm that he's carrying around for now? So I will roll a d12. And I get a 6. No, but. Okay, so he had this severed arm with him that was from the site of the undead attack where he fought the birds. And I think when he found it, it was still twitching. There was a life in it, and he has looked at it several times since, and every time he looks at it, the fingers are moving slightly. There is some remnants of life or unlife in this limb. But he presents it now to Howl, places it on the desk, and looks at Howl with this intense, serious, knightly glare and says, "This is what we've come to Freetown to talk about." But that the arm now is completely lifeless. It's just limp and decaying, and it smells terrible. And Howl, just a short beat passes, but he is ready for anything. And he says, I see, this is clearly the remnants of some great battle that you've been in. And the question for me, of course, is who did this arm belong to? And at this point, Knot looks down and realizes that it's no longer twitching. It's no longer giving evidence that it's a supernatural thing to be worried about, and not stutters a little. So Demelza interjects, and she begins telling the story as she did the first time when she met Not and Maldita, clearly laying out what happened. But she begins to do that, and then she says, "But Master Howell, would it not be better for us to present this information to the council? Surely there are others in Freetown who would benefit from hearing this." Not and Maldita look a little bit offended that she's suggested that Howell isn't the person to talk to here. They're ready to jump to his defense, and Howell says, "No, please, please, please. I assure you, young miss, that what you're getting from me is a quality of attention, support that you will not get from the council. I am the steward of this holding. I can give you the best support you need to deal with this worrying, frightful event. And we don't really need to concern ourselves with bothering the entire council. I will relay the relevant information to them when the time comes." And I think the question I have for the Oracle is whether Howell's primary concern here, they lay out the details. He understands that there is a roving band of undead in the south, some distance away from the holding, not immediately threatening the holding in any way. The question for the Oracle is this his primary concern right now? Is this something he does want to deal with? I think it's unlikely, so I'm going to roll 2d12 and take the lower. And I rolled double 12s. Okay, does he think this is a problem? Yes, he does, and he is especially concerned with it. Okay, I personally like the idea that Howell there's more to Howell than just the helpful steward who wants to deal with the myths directly. He's especially interested in this undead problem, and I think it's because he sees a potential benefit. This is something new. Undead bands roving around is not a known problem in the realm, but I think he hears about it and he thinks there's something rejuvenating happening here. Obviously, it's corrupted, ghastly, but maybe there's some element of it that can be extracted or studied or understood that could be profitable. Maybe if you were to capture one of these undead creatures and bring it to an alchemist, you would be able to understand how it can continue moving and living even when it has received fatal wounds. So let me think. How does Howell suggest proceeding with this? I think he wants to keep it quiet initially. I will ask a question to the Oracle. Is his first thought that he needs to involve an expert healer or alchemist or someone who will be able to study these undead? That's a 7. Yes, but... Okay, I think he knows of someone who would be helpful in understanding this, but they're not present in Freetown. So I'm going to take a look at the map and see where might there be a nearby dwelling. Okay, this is fun because there aren't actually any dwellings super close by. So I think essentially what's going to happen is that Howell is going to ask Not to travel to a dwelling. There's one to the east where there is a master healer and alchemist and someone who may understand these undead creatures and be able to extract some essence from them that could be a valuable substance. Howell wants Not to discreetly go there and find that person. Howell proposes that to Not, and Not is honored and eager to do this. So I need a name. Okay, so I have turned to the prompts at the bottom of the Night pages, and I've got a name of Carenza, who is a great healer. And on the next page, no, I don't like that one. Oh, perfect. Okay. So a dwelling 2 pages after that, there is a welcoming brewery. So Carenza is a great healer who also is producing beer in a small dwelling in the wilderness to the east. Howell speaks of her in adoring terms. She is a genius. She is a credit to the entire realm. You will, if it were not for this vastly important quest, I would advise to you to meet this woman and bask in her wondrous ideas. She's guiding us into a brighter future, one by one, erasing the horrible ailments that afflict the vassals of this realm. She is constantly deriving new substances that are of great benefit to all of us. And he continues in this vein, and not especially feels like he's now moving among the people that he belongs. Here he is having a casual conversation with the steward of a holding. Pretty soon he'll be meeting this genius healer, and he just feels like this is how it should be. This is his fate. So he explains to them where she is, and I think Howell wants to keep this under wraps. So he tells them he doesn't want anyone else to know about these undead, telling them that it could cause panic. And what he would like is for them to rest up here in town if they need to, and then discreetly leave, recruit Carenza to this quest, and then travel to where they expect to find this undead band, rely on her knowledge, determine the best course of action. And I think he will write a letter for Carenza, which they don't see the contents of, and this is Howell laying out what he intends to do. He seals this and gives it to Not. And Demelza holds her tongue. She is concerned about all of this, that this is such an indirect path to dealing with, regardless of what the nature of them is. There are dangerous creatures roving around quite close to her village. They're now planning to travel in the opposite direction, find someone who's a healer, it doesn't seem like, if anything, they should be recruiting fighters. So the scene ends, they leave, and I'm wondering whether Demelza wants to stay with Not and Maldita and pursue this, or does she want to try to recruit some fighters herself to try to deal with the problem. So I will ask the stars, will she stay with Not and Maldita? And I rolled a 6, which is no but. So they're going to go to the east to meet this healer. She's not going to go, but she's not going to reveal her real intentions. So her intentions are to stay in Freetown, try and find some mercenaries or fighters, and then go south, find these undead and kill them. But she's not going to tell Not and Maldita that. She'll give them a simple story that she's been away from home for too long and she needs to be with her people and reassure them things are under control. And I think she flatters Not somewhat about the role he's already played in this and her confidence in him to go forward. So they part ways amicably, and I'll just make a note that there is a new thread that I guess will be developing off screen that is Demelza hiring fighters. So Not was pretty beat up, ever so slightly beat up, when he fought the birds at the undead site. The logical thing would be to stay in town, rest up for a night, and recover his his lost vigor. He is so eager to go on this quest. He's so honored to have been chosen by Howl for this that he's not going to do that. So Not and Maldita will have a meal. I think they have passed the morning here. There's been plenty going on. And at noon, they're going to leave Freetown and they're going to travel to, they have some rough map and marked on it the location of Carence's brewery. So let's start some travel. Okay, so I'm rolling on the nature weather table. Description is gentle, and the element is thunder. Gentle thunder. I'm actually just going to jump on to the next prompt after thunder, which is dust. So there is a wind coming in from the east, the direction that they're traveling in, and it's carrying on it a fine sand, quite an irritating wind, kind of dusting your face, your eyes with this sand, maybe or a foreboding sign from the elements. And they set out at noon and are going to travel for one phase of the day. So they're going to travel northeast to a marsh. Let's do a wilderness roll. 1. Encounter the next omen from a random myth in this realm. All I've established so far is that myth 3 is the dead. I'm going to roll a d6 and see which myth I encounter a omen from. And it's 3 again. So myth 3. So this is the third omen I'm encountering from the dead myth. And what it says is, under Seer's orders, a graveyard is being burned as a precaution against the restless dead. Acolytes scatter dried herbs. 5 great red vultures circle. That's perfect. So the vultures that he fought with are, well, same species, different vultures. He's going to be encountering. The hex is actually it contains a sanctum. So it's right beside the holding. A sanctum is the home of a seer. So that's kind of suitable that there is something happening here under Seer's orders. A graveyard is being burned. I think it's reasonable to find out which seer is involved. So I will roll a d6 and a d12 to find out which seer is the local seer here. 5 and a 5, which is the Cosmic Knight. And at the bottom of the Cosmic Knight is the Rose Seer. Frail body, lilting head of pink flesh petals. Every need lovingly tended to by an elderly woman. Whispers her guidance as obscure, ugly poetry, applauded by her caretaker. Wants everyone to suffer just enough to enjoy the little pleasure they have. That's horrible. Okay, the Rose Seer. There's a name underneath the Rose Seer, Viralag. I like Viralag as the name of the elderly woman which cares for this creature who has flesh petals, pink flesh petals in place of her head, and there's a very evocative drawing of her above that. It's quite creepy, actually. Not and Maldita left at noon. They've been riding for the afternoon and the sun is setting, and they're looking for a comfortable place to rest in the marshlands to the east of Freetown. And up ahead they can see fire, and they think, okay, this looks like some kind of camp, and maybe there's some travelers there who they can share a meal with and share some stories and relax. So they head in the direction of that, and when they get closer they see this strange scene. It's become dark as they arrive, so the light is mostly being cast by fires scattered around on the ground in various states of either blazing or they've died down. This is like lighting multiple fires. It's like they're clearing ground or destroying the ground. And there's people running to and fro peasants carrying torches, being given direction, and there is an old woman who's very active in directing them. All I have about Viralag, the Rose Seer's attendant, is that she is an elderly woman, and she lovingly tends to the seer. So I'll go to the people sparks, and I'll just get her appearance. So physique is cold, and dress is gaudy. So Not and Maldita haven't yet noticed the Rose Seer. What they've seen is these peasants rushing around under orders, burning the ground, which they've started to realise now has the signs of it being a graveyard. There's markings over different places, and it's quite shocking when they realise what's happening, that a graveyard is being defiled in this way. And the woman at the centre of it all is wrapping herself in a cloak against the cold. She's quite elderly, and she has this very unusual cloak wrapped around her that is embroidered with roses, pink roses and light green and white colours elsewhere. It's a little bit tattered, and it looks like she's been maybe wearing this for decades. And I'm going to just do a look roll, because there are these giant vultures overhead. I don't think Not has noticed them yet. He has history with giant vultures, so I want to know how serious that is of a concern. And I rolled a 1, which I believe, if I check look roll, is a crisis, something immediately bad. So I think this is not what I intended to do, but I think there are multiple giant vultures flying overhead, because a graveyard is being disturbed, and they've caught scent of flesh, decaying flesh. I think one of the birds knows Not. I'm all in favour of giving birds some amount of intelligence and memory. So the bird that he dealt with previously, he killed one bird and scared away another. I think it was the more aggressive of the two that he did not kill, is overhead. A crisis is something immediately bad. I think that's enough. That's immediately bad, that there's a bird up there that recognizes Not. I'm going to roll to see, does it attack him? 7. Does it attack him? Yes, but I think this bird is up there. It has seen Not. Not has not seen it, but it will not attack yet. So there's plenty of people, there's plenty of activity down below, and this bird is going to watch and look for a moment to attack. So to see whether Not lets his guard down, for example, by going to sleep, which he is planning to do in the near future. Anyway, Not and Maldita approach the group, and I think on the way over, Maldita is especially disgusted by this and says, "How could they do this? This is a graveyard. What twisted things happen in this realm?" And Not hushes her and says, "We don't know yet what's happening here. Let's talk to this woman who seems to be the ringleader." He dismounts and settles his steed and approaches Viralag. And she is eagerly ordering people around, kind of waving a wizened hand here and there, pointing them where to go. Barely notices that she's being approached by a knight wearing gilded armour. And she turns to him at the last moment and is a little stunned at his approach. And he addresses her formally and respectfully. I think asks her in simple terms what's happening here. And Viralag speaks. She says, "We are following the strict instructions of the Lady Rose. She has explained to us
the dangers that lie in this place and how they must be settled and put to rest. And it's at this moment when she's speaking and when she's very respectfully talking about the Lady Rose and kind of indicating backwards behind her, that Not appreciates that there is a caravan, of a horse-drawn, enclosed carriage that Not had not taken much notice of before, but it is painted on the outside with roses. Has seen better days. It's reminiscent of the cloak that Viralag is wearing. It has a kind of drape hanging down at the front that lets some light through, and he can see motion inside, that there's someone inside who is kind of overseeing everything that's happened here, and he hadn't really noticed that until Viralag had mentioned the Lady Rose. And Not asks further about who is the Lady Rose. Viralag, her eyes widen. You must be a traveller in this realm not to know the great Lady Rose. She is a seer of great wisdom, and she is protecting us from a new threat, a threat of risen dead. Not starts at this. He had agreed more or less with Howell not to talk to people about the risen dead, but I think he forgets that in this moment and begins chattering about his experience with it and that he's on a quest related to this. And Viralag passes some more instructions to the people running about burning the graveyard, and says, Come, you great knight must see the Lady Rose and share what you know with her and see what instruction she has for you. Not has met a seer before because he was knighted by one, but this is an important moment for him. This is him out in the field on a quest, about to get direction from a seer. So he is treating this almost like a religious experience, and takes off his helm, which he didn't need to be wearing anyway, but takes off his helm and kind of runs his fingers through his hair to prepare himself and make himself a little bit less. He's thinking at this point maybe he should have stayed in town and washed up a little bit. He looks a little down the road for a while. Not waves to Maldita saying, no need for you to follow. So Viralag and Not approach this caravan. As they approach, Viralag kneels down, tugs a little at Not's arm, and Not kneels as well. And Viralag calls out, My lady, we have been happened upon by a knight who is willing to offer his service to you. Not didn't exactly say that, but that's how it's been presented to the seer by Viralag. And Not doesn't hear any response when he raises his head slightly. He doesn't see any indication from behind this drapery that they've been beckoned forward. But Viralag stands and pulls Not up to his feet, and she starts to approach with him. And there's a couple of steps, wooden steps, up the caravan to the inside of it. And Viralag goes in forward and pulls back the drape. And for a moment, Not sees something like in the corner of your eye when you turn and your brain hasn't quite made sense of what you've seen and you're trying to understand it. There's a flower in there and there's a person, but he didn't glimpse it for long enough to understand what he saw. And Viralag steps inside, and then the curtain kind of falls back in place. He can still see it's quite dark because everything is just lit by the fires burning in the graveyard. But that orange flickering light is passing through the drape and lighting Viralag inside and something down at the floor of this caravan. Please, Sir Knight, join us. He moves forward slowly. He had his kind of mace in a loop at his belt. He'll take that and lay that down on the ground. I think it's inappropriate for him to go inside with a weapon. and maybe lay out his dagger as well on the ground. And he goes forward and pulls back the drape and crouches down, because it's not really easy to stand inside this small caravan. And his own shadow, with the flames behind him, his own shadow is casting darkness across the Rose Seer, so he can't make her out. And he says, "My lady Rose, I am at your service. I am not the Gilded Knight, on a quest to protect the people of this realm, the risen dead." And she moves, his eyes are gradually adjusting to the darkness. She seems to have hair framing her head, growing out in all directions, so that her head seems much bigger than you might expect. He can hear her whisper. It's too quiet for him to hear, but Viralag is leaning in very close to her. And what is the Rose Seer going to say? Let me roll on Ask the Stars and come up with some weird seer stuff. I've got a 7 and a 7. The sign is the Child, learning and greed. And the position is colliding, change and violence. Okay, the Child, learning. I don't think that Not and Maldita are particularly different in age, but the Child is making me think of the person who's in a student relationship to Not. So I think I'm thinking about this as being about Maldita. And colliding and violence. So the Rose Seer knows the past, the present, the future, different aspects of it, maybe not the full picture. She whispers to Viralag instructions for Not. Not can see in the low light Viralag's face these different emotions playing across her face. And she's nodding and listening to something quite complicated. When she has heard all of the instructions, she turns to Not and says, You fought a great beast last night. You were blooded in combat, but your squire was not puzzled by this. He was expecting to hear more about the graveyard being burned, to hear something about this healer that they're going to seek, but it's something about himself and Maldita. Viralag goes on, Your squire must be bloodied, and you must be the one to do it, so that she is ready for what lies ahead. And Not is shocked. He's just speechless. He doesn't say anything, and there's silence in this room, in this enclosed kind of cabin. His eyes have gotten a little bit more used to the dark, and the Rose Seer shifts. Just the big thing that he can't quite clarify in his mind is how large her head appears, but waving slightly when it moves, that surely this is hair. He gathers himself a little and I don't understand. You want me to beat my squire? And there's more whispers. Viralag speaks again and says, Not a beating, a true combat that must draw blood. Not is too frightened to ask more, waits. Viralag stares him down. See to it, now. And Not bows, pays a deep bow, paying his respects, and turns. And outside the caravan, he picks up his mace and his dagger and looks ahead of him, and he can see in the background flames, a burning graveyard, and people rushing around, and some of them actually quite emotional. These are the local people burning the graves of maybe their relatives under the instruction of the Rose Seer, and looking towards him with an awe, just even a smile on her face. Maldita is so excited for Not that he's had this moment. He's been given instructions by a seer, and Not grasps his mace in one hand, his dagger in the other, is trying to decide what weapon is the best one to attack. I think that's a good place to end this session. Unexpected direction for it, but that's cool.